there, time for your dose of daily distinction. I don't know if dose is a good word to use or not. It makes it sound like something that you have to take. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Daily Distinction for today. Brian, coffee cheers. You bet, my friend. Here we go. Got it right here. Jason Bradshaw watching this morning at 5 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Holy cow, I can't believe you're here. How you doing? I just saw your email right before I went on. I had a chance to respond to it about Blue and Berry, but I'm more interested by the minute in that. Hey, Mike, great to see you. Ruby, holy cow, wow, great to see you. My goodness, I've got a bunch of pals on here today. That is fantastic. Thank you so much. From Sydney to Denver to Wisconsin, and Mike, I'm not certain where you are. So, and hey, Scott from back home. So everybody jumping on here today. I really appreciate that. We've got a good topic today. But before we jump into that, as I see that people are signing on, I want to remind you, again, just to save the date kind of thing. The website isn't open yet. Matter of fact, we got a conversation later today with the guy that's putting the website together to get that up and going. But the Ultimate Business Summit is virtual this year. It's August 13th and 14th. Please save the date for that. This will be the last one we do. Larry Winget, Randy Pennington, and me, and all those guys are going to be guests on future episodes, by the way. But we have put together, I'm so excited about it because you can't believe all the folks that we've got that are going to be participating in this. Larry, Randy, and I, of course, running it as we always have. But we've got special guests this year like Mark Sanborn that wrote the million-selling plus book, New York Times bestseller, The Fred Factor, Simon Bailey, former executive with the Disney Institute, Lisa Ford, who created the biggest selling customer service video of all time. Good grief. It's just fantastic. Joe Calloway, his book, Keep It Simple, has just killed it on the bestseller charts. So all those folks are going to be participating as well. It is just going to be absolutely fantastic. And it's under $100 for basic registration, which is amazing because you're going to get 2 days of all of that. So more on that is coming. Kit, you're right. It's just amazing that the year is half over already, isn't it? It's crazy. It's crazy. Oh, Mike, you're in Encinitas. I didn't realize that. Holy cow. I lived for a short period of time in the San Diego area and miss it every day. So all is good. So one to mention too is everybody signing on, and thank you for sharing, because that's how we grow in our number of viewers, is that you folks are kind enough to share it. We're hitting, as I look at the numbers, we're hitting about 2,000 views a day, and some days a little more across YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and big on the replays. And that happens for one reason, because you folks share it. And that's really, really important. So take just a moment, if you would, share this with your friends so that they connect, and that we can talk today about how to confuse others. You know, I was thinking of the old Temptations hit. I'm trying to remember what year it was, like 1970. The Temptations had a hit with the Ball of Confusion. And the first verse is, "That's what the world is today, ball of confusion." And I was thinking about how that seems to be the case today. We're so confused about what's going on with everything that's happening. And my gosh, just all that's going on in the world today. So I made a list of 4 things that we could do to really confuse other people. So if you want to confuse others, here are 4 things that you can do that will absolutely confuse others. Oh, and by the way, if you want to eliminate confusion with your customers and with your friends, with your family, maybe don't do these things. Maybe do the opposite of these things. But here are 4 ways that you can absolutely confuse other people. Number 1, give them an overwhelming number of choices. It's true. The more choices you give, the more confused people become. Take a look at what's happening now. There was so much coming out about the pandemic. I think that's part of the problem. that we didn't know what to believe, and it didn't matter what someone said. Someone else had something else that contradicted that, and it made it hard to get on top of it at the beginning because we were getting such an overwhelming number of choices. Oh, it'll live forever on this surface. Masks don't help, blah, blah, blah. And it went on and on and on. And for everything that we saw, there was a contradictory piece. And so when we are presented with an overwhelming number of choices, what happens is we get confused. And we make bad decisions when we're confused. Or we do the wrong thing when we're confused. So presenting somebody with an overwhelming number of choices creates confusion. One of my coaching clients in the past has been Dr. Sheena Agnar. She's a professor at Columbia University and wrote an incredible book called The Art of Choosing. And Sheena is the one that's kind of known in the psychology of choice as setting up the experiment with the jams. Have you heard about that? There was a store that sold like 256, that's a guess on the number, but it was like an enormous number of types of jams, like jelly and jam, right? The problem was they had them out for display, but they weren't selling a lot of jam. And people would come and even take pictures of the display, and they would look at how many different types of jams there are, but people weren't buying anything, which wasn't really great for the store. So they tried an experiment. They reduced the number to 5, and the sales went through the roof. Why? Because when there's an overwhelming number of choices, we get confused. And when we're confused, we seldom make a decision. You've heard that line, paralysis by analysis. That's where it comes from, is that we have this overwhelming number of choices, and the overwhelming number of choices confuses us. Yeah, Jason, you're right. The Model T. What's the line? Henry Ford said they can have it in any color they want as long as it's black. That's right. And why was it the biggest selling car? Part of it, obviously, because it was such an early forerunner in price and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, there it is, right? First thing Steve Jobs did, as I'm sure you know, Jason, when he took over Apple again, is to eliminate like 80% of the products that Apple was selling, just slashed it. Why? Because when you're confused about which model is right for you, it's hard to make a decision about which model you should choose. And so the confused buyer doesn't buy. Hey, Charles, great to see you in Portland, Oregon today. Yeah, you're not in the Silicon Valley today, huh? So good to see you. Yes, here we go. Let's find a way to get confused and let that in, right? So that's number one. So how does this apply to you? How many choices are you giving your customers? And when you talk to your kids, how many choices do you give them? My dad had 2, my way or the highway, right? It was pretty easy to make that choice. How many choices are you providing your customers? If you give them a multitude of choices, the chances are you're going to confuse them. I posted this on Twitter. I hadn't even thought about it right now. I posted this on Twitter a couple of days ago. In World War II, how did we shoot down enemy planes? Well, it's a lot different than it is today. Today, obviously, we have these incredibly targeted and precise missiles and drones. It's unbelievable, the precision that we have in our ability to shoot down planes or to attack today, right? I mean, we know that. We've seen that. However, back in World War II, they didn't have that type of technology. So what they did is fire ammunition up in the air. They called it flak. And what happened wasn't as much that we shot down the enemy plane as it was the enemy plane ran into our ammunition that's in the air. In other words, we just filled the sky with stuff and their planes ran into it. And that's how we shot down planes. I think a lot of businesses operate that way. They think if we can just throw an incredible number of models, an incredible number of choices, an incredible number of options up in the air, then we're going to find a customer that just runs into it and bang, we got a customer. Never thinking about how many get confused and turn away. See, that's another part you've heard me say here before about sales being a numbers game, which is absolutely true, except we don't know all the numbers, right? I mean, we know how many we shoot down, but we don't know how many see the flak in the air and turn around and go the other direction and bomb us another day, right? I mean, we never know how many customers get so confused they go to the competition. We don't have that number. We don't look at that number. We just fill the sky with flak. Giving them an overwhelming number of choices is a way to have difficulty. Kent, yes, you're right. Matter of fact, part of my coaching clients' work was with Audi and examining the number of options when somebody went to order a car. And she kind of coined the term decision fatigue, which means that if you're presented, you sit down to order a car, and if you get, here's 37 colors, pick one. Okay, you pick one. Now here's the 18 different interiors that you can get with that color. Okay, do it. And by the time you get through all of those options, you've got decision fatigue. We find this a lot when Kid, I'm sure you do as well. If you work with home builders, when people are picking out the carpet and they're picking out the fixtures, and there is a decision fatigue there that is extraordinary. Darcy, did you like that? My way or the highway were my two options there. Hey, Ted, always great to see you. Thank you for being here today. All right, here's the second way. Disconnect your promotion from your practice. In other words, say one thing and do another. You want to confuse a customer. You want to confuse people in your life. Just say one thing and do something completely different. They'll be absolutely confused about what's going on. Have you done business someplace that the ad was different than the experience? We all have. I remember going to an emergency room with my wife, and there were these ads on local television about how compassionate we are. We are the compassionate hospital. And they would have billboards. They have billboards on the interstate. How many minutes your wait is right now at the emergency room. And I mean, it was always like 5 or 7, it was never anything high. And, we get there, and it was like how I would picture an emergency room in, a third world country. It was just crazy packed and people crying and moaning. I mean, it was like a war scene. And when we registered, the people were rude, and it took, like 3.5 hours to get seen. And we drive home, and there's this nice 7-minute wait, and when I complained about it, the hospital administrator said, well, people don't believe those things. People don't believe those ads. I was gobsmacked. I was like, flabbergasted. What? You air them anticipating that people won't believe them? It's a great way to confuse your customer. Just disconnect your promotion from your practice and say one thing and do something else. And I promise they're going to be very, very confused, right? Yeah, exactly. Dwayne is in the promotional products business and with 1 million products, but you never try to present even 0.25% of that. Absolutely. Hey, Brian Hess, always great to see you. Thank you for being here. Sonia is from my hometown and knew my dad. And yes, Dad's line was on account of because I said so. I can hear his voice in my head when you say that, Sonia. Absolutely right. So number 2 is to disconnect your promotion from your practice. Want to confuse people? Here's the third way. Rely more on technology and less on human interaction. Now that may surprise you because people make mistakes, right? But I'm going through a thing right now where it's like, okay, the yearly thing is this, the monthly thing is this, so I'm going to subscribe by the month just so I can kind of give it a try. So I click, and it shows the yearly bill. Well, I don't want the yearly bill, so I go back and I hit it. And so if you need help, click here. So I click there, and it takes me back to the original page. It doesn't take me to a help section. There's nobody I can get to explain what's going on. And I guess they don't care that they have that problem because there's no way to really get in touch with them to tell them. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love technology. The folks on here that know me know I I was kind of known in the National Speakers Association as the guy who loves to get the new technology. My friend and client, Jason Bradshaw, that's on from Australia, is probably the only guy I've ever met who's quicker to order from Apple than I am. Maybe it's just because of the time difference. I don't know. But, I love the newest gadget. I love the newest toy. I love the newest tech. I love technology. But yet there has to be human interaction as well. When you take the humans out of the equation and just have technology, boy, you're looking for a great way to confuse your customers right there. You're looking for a great way to confuse the people around you. Ruby, yes, we do love our tech. No, you're another one. You love the gadgets. I love that. And right, Brian, anytime you confuse them, and we're getting to that point in a minute, they just don't do anything. Yeah. Oh, Kit, there's a great example. The phone company or the cable television company, the internet provider. Good Lord. It's just crazy. And Jason makes a great point. The human connection is one of the key pillars that our customers judge their experience with us on. I mean, what kind of experience does the bot create? What kind? I mean, it does, and they're getting better, but is it really where you want to place your customer experience? So, right, Jason. So if you want to confuse your customer, if you want to confuse people, rely more on technology and less on human interaction. I mean, could you imagine if you had your kids download this app, iParent, and they download iParent, and when you have a question, before you come to me for an answer, check with iParent, and it will give you an indication. And then if you need to escalate the problem, then you can come and talk with me perfectly, but personally. But begin by seeking an answer on iParent. Now that I say that, I just had this thought. It's a wonder that somebody hasn't made that yet, right? It's a wonder that somebody hasn't created iParent yet. But that's, if you want to confuse people, just tell them to rely on the tech and not on human interaction. Here's the fourth: make sure that you use a lot of technical terms with people who don't know the subject of the technology. Right? Make sure, if you want to confuse people, use highly technical terms that they don't understand. Remember when you bought your first computer? There's some of you young enough you don't remember that, but remember if you're my age or around that, remember when you bought your first computer and you go in I remember Comp USA was going to be the big computer retailer. And one of the problems, I remember going in the Comp USA when I lived in Indianapolis, and they would all be congregated together. And the problem was they didn't hire people that wanted to be around customers. They hired people that wanted to be around computers. And so if you didn't know the technical terminology, they couldn't translate that. Now, don't get me wrong. You do have to use technical terms, but there's this, I call it the bridge phrase. The bridge phrase. And the bridge phrase is, this means that, right? So this has a 1 terabyte hard drive. This means that you can store X number of movies and this and that, and have space on your hard drive to be able to handle both your home business office work as well as your personal work, right? So you have to bridge it. When you use a technical term, you got to bridge it with that phrase, this means that, so you put it in a way that they understand. But if you want to confuse people, hey, just use the technical terms. Sometimes I feel like no software would have ever had the patience I have for saying, yeah, it's true, Dwayne. It's so true. And here's a challenge as well. When you get in a specialty area, I'm thinking of in finance, right? Financial professionals or surgeons or whatever. One of the challenges is that you've worked so hard to gain this understanding of this highly complex and technical field that it becomes jargon. It becomes the natural way that you describe things. And you get so used to talking with others that do what you do in that jargon that it's really hard for you to flip that switch and to communicate with those who aren't a part of that. It's like the phenomenon that I talk about when we go to work. For some reason, we take off our customer hat and we think like an employee, never thinking like the customer. Now, we think like the customer when we're not at work and when we're out buying something. We think like everybody else. But man, as soon as we hit the office or get in front of the laptop or whatever, we start thinking like an employee, not like a customer. Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. I mean, how do you get new employees to succeed when we're always using technical terms or abbreviations? And holy cow, I think about government and military, particularly here in the States with that. There's so many government, like we're doing that with the Small Business Association, Small Business Administration, the SBA, which is dealing with the pandemic emergency loans, and everything is the abbreviation. Everything is the acronym. Oh, you work for CompUSA part-time. There you go. I love it. Hey, Bruce, technical terms you still run into doing keynotes that need translations. That's really interesting. I need to think about that for a little bit. I mean, there's a certain jargon that you use, and you'll appreciate this with your video background. I mean, there's a certain jargon that I'll use with the crew. You want HDMI or VGA on? You want, how's the line for audio? There's certain things that the audience wouldn't understand, but the crew does. So you run into that. I need to think about that. There are certain things. Do you have a countryman? Countryman is a kind of microphone. It's the thing that fits on your ear as opposed to clips on, and things like that. But it's more the technical aspects of the production that the audience wouldn't know about. But you only talk about that with the technical crew. But I need to think about that. That's a good one, Charles. Yeah. Nobody mentioned a terabyte. Oh, isn't that the truth? My first computer was a Macintosh Plus. And what did it have? 200, either 512? No, because that was the second one. Yeah, no, the Plus had 512. 512K. I mean, not even 1 megabyte. And I'm like, how in the world could you ever fill a hard drive with 1/2 of 1 megabyte? And now most files are bigger than that, much less everything on there. So use a lot of technical terms with people that don't understand technology. So those are the four. And as mentioned, a confused prospect never becomes a customer. A confused prospect doesn't buy. So how do you confuse others? Well, you start by giving them an overwhelming number of choices. Then you disconnect your promotion from your practice. Then turn it all over to technology. People don't need to get involved. Make sure you use a lot of technical terms with people who don't understand. You do all those, and I promise that you end up with confused customers. Absolutely. So how do we get around that? Well, first of all, we're going to limit the number of choices. See, the problem with overwhelming number of choices, is also the subliminal message that we're sending. Do you ever think about that? If somebody opens up the book and says, here's 87 different choices, not only are you overwhelming them with choices, but you're also kind of subconsciously planting the message, I don't know you. You might be a prospect, but I don't know what you want. I don't know what would engage you. I don't know you. Because if I knew you, I could make a recommendation. Could you imagine going to a doctor's office and he opens up the cabinet and there's 87 different pill bottles there? And he said, now, which one of these would you like? You'd say, that's your job, right? I mean, that's your job. You're supposed to tell me which one of those is most beneficial. You're supposed to know me and what's wrong with me and help me get better. Our customers are saying the same thing to us. You're supposed to know me, make a recommendation, help me fulfill this want or need that I have with what you are offering in your products or services. Make a prescription, make a recommendation. Don't just give me a whole number of choices and tell me to pick one. As I said in the book, Iconic, the number one thing that iconic organizations do, they do what they said they would do when they said they'd do it. They have congruency between promotion and practice. They have congruency between what they promise and what they deliver. If you want to be iconic and reach the highest level of distinction, then what you got to do is to make certain that your promotion and practice are incredibly tightly interwoven. That's part of why, I mean, you guys have heard me talk on here before about Volkswagen Australia and Jason that was on here. He is the head guy of Volkswagen for both marketing and the customer experience. And I think that's where most businesses are going to go, is that we make that the same position. And the reason that we make that the same position is that the person who makes the promise also ought to be the person in charge of the performance, right? I mean, if I'm making the promise through marketing, doesn't it make sense that I also ought to have authority and be responsible for the performance of what customers think of how we delivered on that? And I just think that is the way it needs to go. And Jason does a brilliant job at that, right? At that. Hey, my buddy Dan LeClaire, my best pal from Franklin College. I have a client software CEO who has a great term, electronic courage. I love that. Meaning that when we rely on technology, we lose the civility and the connection that comes through human interaction. Dan, what a great insight. Because did you see today, there was another announcement just in the last couple of hours that there are several companies, Microsoft is one, Nike is considering it, getting out of social media advertising altogether because social media has become bots talking to bots, to use the Chris Brogan term, right? We go in, we program our tweets, we program what we're going to do, and everybody else does too. And so the only people left in there sometimes, I'm talking more about Twitter and that, are the people that are mean, right? And the civility that has been lost. Well, then always great to see you. Ken, great to see you. Yes, there's what Jason is in charge of: product, training, digital transformation, customer experience, employee experience, and marketing. And in his spare time, oh man, I tell you, talk about a full plate. There it is. Oh, Starbucks. That's who I didn't. Yeah, Starbucks has postponed all social media advertising. So there you go. That's what happens when you do that. Number 3, that's what we've been talking about. Number 4, make certain that you, even when you have to use technical terminology, make certain that you use that bridge phrase. This means that, so that people get it, right? And put it in a language, put it in a method, put it in a way that they understand. Because as we have said, a confused prospect never becomes a customer. Our goal is not to confuse you. Our goal here with Daily Distinction is to try to inspire, uplift, inform, motivate, all of the above. I hope